I lift my eyes up to the mountains. Where does my help come from? My help comes from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth. He will not let your foot slip. He who watches over you will not slumber. Indeed, he who watches over Israel will neither slumber nor sleep. The Lord watches over you. The Lord is your shade at your right hand. The sun will not harm you by day, nor the moon by night. The Lord will keep you from all harm. He will watch over your life. The Lord will watch over our coming and going, both now and forevermore.
Hey Shepherd family, welcome to Digital Worship this week. I'm John Carolus, one of our associate pastors, and it's good to have you with us here in this digital setting. This is a special week for us. It's the week before Confirmation, the week before Reformation Sunday. And we're taking some time to reflect on what it means to be a believer, to be a Christian. We've spent these 6 weeks prior learning about the basics of our faith to set a strong foundation to endure through life. And today we'll understand what it means that we have received all of these things as a gift from God. As we take some time to worship together today, I want to remind you that we are in this place not because of our own self-discovery, not because of our own self-assurance, not because of our own accolades or achievements. It's only because of God's grace, His Spirit being poured out on us as an act of mercy. He sees us in our sin. He sees us in our brokenness. He sees us in our pride, in our selfishness, and He says, I still love you, and I have a plan to bring you into my family and to dwell with you through this life and bring you into an eternal relationship with me. As we remember that truth, as we cast ourselves on that truth, not as people who deserve God's attention, but those who have mercifully received it, we join in worshiping God together today.
Sometimes on this journey, I get lost in my mistakes. What looks to me like weakness is a canvas for your strength. And my story isn't over, my story's just begun. And failure won't define me, 'cause that's what my Father does. Yeah, failure won't define me, 'cause that's what my Father does. Ooh, lay your burdens down. Ooh, here in the Father's house, check your shame at the door, 'cause it ain't welcome anymore. Ooh, you're in the Father's house. Arrival's not the end game, the journey's where you are. You never wanted perfect, you just wanted my heart. And the story isn't over if the story isn't good. Failure's never final when the Father's in the room. No, failure's never final when the Father's in the room. Ooh, lay your burdens down. Ooh, here in the Father's house, check your shame at the door, 'cause it ain't welcome anymore. Ooh, you're in the Father's house. Ooh. ain't welcome anymore. Ooh, you're in the Father's house. Ooh, yeah. Lay your burdens down. Ooh, here in the Father's house. Check your shame at the door, 'cause it ain't welcome anymore. Ooh, you're in the Father's house, yeah.
Well, we've made our way through the small catechism over the last 6 weeks, working through the basic pieces of the foundation of our faith. And as we've been doing that, we've been gearing up for next week, which will be our confirmation service, where 8 students are being brought into our church family officially as members in their own right. But today we're going to spend a little bit of time thinking about what it means to be practicing Christians, to be believers who do what Jesus says, and to be part of a family of faith. What does it mean that we call ourselves a congregation? What does it mean that we have a shepherd family that gathers together digitally, that gathers together on our Shea campus and on our Mountain View campus? And as we function as a family, how do we approach our experience of worship and receiving God's gifts as people, as real people who are living life and experiencing hardships and victories and temptations and resilience in our faith? What does it mean to be these kind of people that are now receiving among us eight new believers, 8 new members? We're not confirming their Christianity. They've been believers ever since they were baptized, all the way back as children. But we're confirming in them the faith that they are taking on as their own, and now stepping forward in their own journey of faith in their own way. But what kind of church are they becoming members of? What kind of community of faith are they now joining? And how can we be sure that we live this life where confirmation is not something that happened to us a long time ago, but really confirmation, and the further we get from it as we get older, it becomes more and more important that confirmation is really something that we remember each and every day. So we'll listen to this story from Luke chapter 18 and understand what it teaches us about how to approach our understanding of who we are as God's children. Then Jesus told this story to some who had great confidence in their own righteousness and scorned everyone else. 2 men went to the temple to pray. One was a Pharisee, and the other was a despised tax collector. The Pharisee stood by himself and prayed this prayer: "I thank you, God, that I'm not like other people, cheaters, sinners, adulterers. I'm certainly not like that tax collector. I fast twice a week, and I give you 1/10 of my income." But the tax collector stood at a distance and dared not even lift his eyes to heaven as he prayed. Instead, he beat his chest in sorrow, saying, "O God, be merciful to me, for I am a sinner." I tell you, this sinner, not the Pharisee, returned home justified before God. For those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted. You know, as we go through life, most of the time we're told that as we acquire certain accolades or certain achievements or certain titles, we become greater and greater. We should become more and more proud of who we are. We should be more confident in who we are and what we've become. But there's an ironic paradox that exists within our Christian faith that teaches us to lift up this tax collector who has humbled himself as the example, rather than a Pharisee who has become an expert in the law of the Lord, who has spent hours and days and years of his life learning what the instructions of God were and living this holy life that he might exalt himself over the people around him. This irony of embracing the humble and uneducated rather than the proud and the self-confident goes against the way that the rest of the world seems to speak, especially when it comes to careers or personal professional development, between relationship building and understanding how we form and shape our identities. But the paradox is this: God justified the tax collector in this story, and the Pharisee went home unjustified, unforgiven, not made right with God. And so let's take a closer look at the way that they approached their understanding of who they were. So Jesus is telling this story particularly to people who are self-confident, self-righteous, arrogant in their approach to faith. And the caution for us is always that we should avoid becoming that way. But as we go through life, as we become greater in who we are, as we get older, as our careers progress, as we own maybe a bigger house or a better car or have more children or make more money, there's a temptation in our hearts to be proud of who we are and to think that, well, look at all the great things I've done. Surely God has blessed me and forgiven me, and it's because of these gifts that I have that He has given me this kind of life. So I'm going to walk into church and just thank God for the way He has made me and thank Him for the way He hasn't made me, how He has not made me a bad person, how He has kept me from being sinful and kept me from being corrupted and kept me from being all these other things. And when you listen to the prayer of this Pharisee, you can hear the arrogance that maybe he is unaware of. You can hear the self-righteousness and the self-confidence come through. He's not asking God to forgive him. He's not asking God to help him in any way. Instead, he's just saying, Lord, I am as good as it gets. Thanks for helping me get there. The tax collector, on the other hand, the one whom Jesus points his listeners to as the example to follow, he walks into the assembly in the temple. He stays away from the center of attention. He's standing at a distance so that others might not notice him because he is keenly aware of his imperfection. He knows exactly who he is and what he deserves. He's a sinner. He is corrupted. He has made a living off of making other people miserable. He has been cast out of society, and yet somehow he knows that the only way for him to be made right before God is to come to Him and ask Him for His mercy. And that's the heart of God, to be merciful to those who recognize their sinfulness, who recognize their brokenness, who recognize their tendency to go their own way. And when He reaches out for that mercy, God gives it to him and pours it lavishly upon him. Abundantly, this tax collector is given forgiveness and grace. And Jesus tells His listeners, that is the man who went home justified. That's the man who went home made right by God. So the question for us today is, what kind of church are we? What kind of church are we full of? What kind of people are we full of as a church? Are we full of the self-righteous, well-known, well-accomplished Pharisee who maybe is very well educated and biblically literate and has been walking in this faith their whole lives and is confident because they have done everything correctly to win God's favor in their lives? Or are we the tax collector? Do we recognize that we are broken and undeserving of God's love? Do we understand that by no merit of our own, by no achievement of our own actions or our own mindsets, do we deserve to be considered a member of this holy church, a member of this family of God, a child, a name bearer of the Creator of the heavens? There's no reason for us to hold that title, for us to carry that glory, for us to be honored and exalted in that way, because we know that we're broken. It's interesting, here at Shepherd we've got 3 pastors. About 14 years ago, I was confirmed. About 22 or so years ago, Pastor Scott was confirmed. About 34 years ago, Pastor Allen was confirmed. And the further we get away from our confirmations when we were in 8th or 9th grade, there is this growing recognition of the fact that I have not become closer to God. I have not stepped closer and worked harder and become more and more like God based on my own efforts. Rather, God has pulled me closer according to His own mercy. Since that time, as an 8th grader, my life has been full of all kinds of changes of direction, of maturation through mistakes, sometimes through great decisions, sometimes through poor decisions, and yet I can confidently tell you this. It's only because of God's grace and mercy that I have ever come close to the person that I am today. For whatever reason, God has chosen me to be someone to share His great news with others. I do not deserve that. Believe me, there have been times where I've thought I had it all figured out. I have all the right answers. God is going to bless me financially, or God's going to bless me professionally. God's going to bless me geographically. And certainly God has done those things, but not because of my own decisions. It's only because He has poured out His mercy. Because Jesus on the cross won for us forgiveness and a new life and a new identity. And when we come before God and we say, Lord, I am so broken, I'm so ashamed. I am undeserving. He pours out that love upon you and me. So as we welcome 8 new members into our congregation a week from today, I encourage you to consider whether you have wandered into the Pharisee's shoes and become a little too proud and a little too self-confident, and instead to reflect and to repent, to change our mindset so that we might walk in the shoes of that tax collector who knows that it's only because of God's mercy that he has been called a child of God.
Who am I that the highest king would welcome? I was lost, but he brought me. Oh, his love for me. Oh, his love for me. Who the Son sets free, oh, is free indeed. I'm a child of God, yes I am. Free at last, he has ransomed his grace runs while I was a slave to sin, Jesus died for me. Yes, he died for me. Who the Son sets free, oh, is free indeed. I'm a child of God, yes I am. In my Father's house, there's a place for me. I'm a child of God, yes I am. I am chosen, not forsaken. I am who you say I am. You are for me, not against me. I am who you say I am. I am chosen, not forsaken. I am who you say I am. You are for me, not against me. I am who you say I am. I am who you say I am. Who the Son sets free, oh, is free indeed. I'm a child of God, yes I am. In my Father's house, there's a place for me. I'm a child of God, yes I am. Let's sing in my Father's house. In my Father's house, there's a place for me. I'm a child of God, yes I am.
I encourage you to take a few moments of quiet prayer today. Think about those times where maybe your arrogance or self-assurance have gotten the better of you. Lay those things before God, confess of those things before God, and ask that He would be at work in your heart to shape you into a person who's more in line with His heart, recognizing that our own brokenness keeps us separated from Him, but He has crossed over that gap out of mercy and love for His children to rescue us from our own selfishness, from our own sinfulness. And then, miraculously, to work through people like you and me, broken people, self-assured, selfish people, to share that same good news with others. Who has God put in your life that you might share that good news with? Let's take some time for prayer together. As you go out into the week ahead, go with God's blessing. May He be with you. May He walk with you. May He be the hope in which you trust. May the Father, the Son, and the Spirit dwell in your heart and mind as you richly and joyfully share His love with others. Have a great week, and we will see you next week for our Confirmation and Reformation Sunday.
I searched the world, but it couldn't fill me. Man's empty praise and treasures of fame are never enough. But you came along and put me back together, and every desire is now satisfied here in your love. Oh, there's nothing. Oh, there's nothing better than you. There's nothing better than you. No, there's nothing. Nothing is better than you. Oh, I know that's true, yeah. I'm not afraid, no, to show you my weakness, my failures and flaws. Lord, you've seen them all, and you still call me friend. Yes, you do. 'Cause the God of the mountain is the God of the valley. There's not a place your mercy and grace won't find me again. Oh, come on. Oh, there's nothing better than you. There's nothing better than you. No, there's nothing. Nothing is better than you. No, there's nothing better than you. There's nothing better than you. No, there's nothing. Nothing is better than you. You turn mourning to dancing. You give beauty for ashes. You turn shame into glory. You're the only one who can. I'll sing it again. You turn mourning to dancing. You give beauty for ashes. You turn shame into glory. You're the only one who can. You turn praise into garden. You turn bones into armies. You turn seas into highways. You're the only one who can. You're the only one who can. Sing it out. Oh, there's nothing better than you. Come on, there's nothing is better than you. Yeah, sounds good. Oh, yeah. Oh, there's nothing better than you. There's nothing better than you. Oh, there's nothing. Nothing is better than you. Oh, you turn graves into gardens. You turn graves into gardens. You turn bones into